It's talking about Mars in Capricorn from early May until early November. Time to face your fear of death and grow up. Yes, I said it, and I'm going there in this video. So I'm talking about Mars retrograde and the phenomena that occurs often when Mars goes retrograde. He winds up occupying the same sign for about 6 months. In 2016, Mars was retrograde in Scorpio, joined Saturn for about 6 months. I believe it was from like February until about September or something like that. That would be about 7 months. And in 2018, Mars is going to be retrograde in Capricorn from May the 2nd until November, I think it's November 6th or something, about 6 months. And he's going to be retrograde in Capricorn and joined Ketu. So we have a similar phenomena, just in a general sense, to what occurred in 2016. And here's the similarities, because 2016 Mars was in a powerful sign of his own, the sign of Scorpio, because he rules Scorpio, and he was with Saturn, a natural malefic. And Scorpio is a tamasic sign, about destroying what we think is making us weak. This is what the tamasic signs do. It's not a judgment. They're good at that. They're good at destroying what makes us weak. But on a mass scale, often what we see, because we see many times the sort of lowest common denominator played out on a mass scale, Scorpio on a mass scale can have tendencies of paranoia and, like conspiracy theories, and all of these kinds of things can be really big in Scorpio. And so we saw in 2016 a lot of that, and those more, those darker elements actually prevailed in some ways, and to this day are really in some ways driving a lot of our discussion. The way this is similar to what's happening now is it's going to be in Capricorn, which is another tamasic sign. It's going to be joined Ketu, which is another natural malefic energy. And Mars is going to be very powerful because he's exalted in Capricorn. So one of the things that astrologers tend to do is look for similarities and differences. It's one of the simplest principles. Similarity, difference, when you're reading a chart or whatever. And so when you're trying to get a feeling of how something might be, you can look at perhaps, like a recent past cycle or whatever, and draw the similarities, but then also the differences. So when I talk about the similarities, like I just did, Mars is strong in both cases. Both signs are tamasic, which are about destroying what's making us weak. I'll explain Capricorn in a minute. And they were both joined natural malefics. Saturn, because he brings the desire to want to control. And Ketu brings a desire to penetrate to the truth and maybe blow things up. This kind of explosive frustration is what Ketu brings in a malefic sense, and also a tendency to hide things because we think we already know it. It's like this expertise that can blind us, like a blinding expertise. Oh, I already know that. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. I already know. That can be the blind spot of Ketu, where we think we already know it, but we don't. And so in Capricorn, the malefic quality, the tamasic quality of Capricorn is to destroy what we think is making us weak. Again, in Scorpio, we said it's actually a way to make us emotionally strong. This is Scorpio, by destroying what's making us emotionally weak. But the way we can feel what's making us emotionally weak is to get a little bit paranoid about what might be a point of vulnerability. That's actually what paranoia is. It's like, like jealousy or paranoia is actually a conflation of things that could maybe happen, maybe this, maybe that, and in facing that part of us that's paranoid, we wind up destroying that emotional vulnerability by eventually, after we cycle through that, getting more emotional courage because we endure it. We withstand the emotional frustration and the darker tendencies, hopefully. And over time, this happens naturally. If someone has planets in Scorpio or what have you, this is just a process that they go through, and then over time, they get better at dealing with that because that's just their life experience, and we learn not to trust it. In Capricorn, it's very different. We're trying to destroy what's making us weak, mainly materially, and in the sense of a long-term kind of material plan, which culminates in what's ultimately going to destroy us, which is we're going to die. Pretty big stuff with Saturn. Saturn's the big guy. He doesn't play around as far as this stuff is concerned. We have to make peace with our mortality because all this is going to end. Nobody gets out alive. And Saturn is the part of us that knows this. And however we want to sugarcoat it, that's just the way it is. And what happens as a result, just like with Scorpio, we have emotional vulnerability, so we create this paranoia to exacerbate it, and then we handle it, and then eventually we feel more emotionally empowered. With Capricorn, we're not necessarily tuned into the fact that there's a vulnerability in the physical body. We kind of push it aside, just like with Scorpio. We're not thinking it's our emotional vulnerability. We're thinking, no, it's really, this could really happen. We're actually buying into the paranoia. Just like with Saturn, we're buying into the, okay, I have to control things. Okay, I have to get enough money. I have to make sure I have all my stuff. And we worry about the physical stuff. We worry about not having enough money, not having a plan for the future. I got to get insurance. I have to get this. I'm going to get sick. What happens if this happens? There's always a bit of a worry with the Tamasic signs. And they are, by the way, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Aquarius. Probably Aquarius is the least worried because it's external, but it's still also worried more on a personal level about how to express power. But the other three Tamasic signs are feminine, and they are more emotionally, psychologically worried, and it's where you have to deal with our psychological complexes, right? And so with Capricorn, it's literally the psychological complex of death. It's pretty major. The reason Mars is exalted here is because what does Mars give in its highest sense? He gives courage. The courage to face death. Can't get much more literal than that. Mars is the courage rather than the opinions that we use to fight with people, which is the sort of average Rajasic emotional quality of Mars, is this frustration that makes us form opinions and then we get into battle with each other. That's the Rajasic nature of Mars. And the lowest quality of Mars is literally like violence, like physical violence, and literally like punching people and hitting people and killing people and stabbing them, and like that's the lowest quality of Mars. Because underneath it all, we're an animal. And whether you acknowledge it or not, you'll fight to the death if you have to. An instinctive animalistic desire and nature to survive will kick in to protect you, and that's what Mars is on a very primal level. Mars is also a Tamasic planet, and it's the fight to survive energy. And so when that fight and that will to survive gets put in Capricorn, which is also the awareness that we're never going to survive. By the way, in case you want to avoid this, listen close. You will not survive. You're going to die. That's it. And you will not survive this. And it's not something we like to talk about. My students are used to this. They come to study with me, and at some point during the weekend, if not several times, I remind them of this, because this is the only thing that makes life meaningful on some level. And on some level, everything about astrology has to come back to this, because everything, especially in Vedic astrology, is built on this reality. This is why we have Sanatana Dharma, and this is why we've incarnated, and this is why we're trying to figure it out, and this is why we feel stress and pressure, because our physical body is going to die. Now we have all these ideas, yeah, but the soul is eternal, and these things give us comfort, and they also take us away from the fact that all of those flowery ideas are fine, but they're also escapes. We escape into that because we don't want to face the truth. So what we do instead, especially through Capricorn, is we get a strategy to try to survive it. No matter what you think, you're trying to survive. You think you're going to get out alive. Yes, you do. I know you do. We all do. The great spiritual master Swami Vishnu Devananda, who was the one who actually started the Shivananda ashrams worldwide, he was a devotee of Master Shivananda, and in one of his books, or maybe it was just in a satsang, I don't remember where, because I've spent a lot of time at Shivananda ashrams, one of his disciples, one of the swamis, told the story of Swami Vishnu talking about this. It might have been in one of his books, like Meditation and Mantras or something, and he says, everybody thinks, when somebody goes to buy a lottery ticket, and you ask them, they think every time they buy the lottery ticket, oh, I know it seems crazy, but I really think I'm going to win. I really think I'm going to win. Otherwise, you wouldn't buy the ticket. When you buy the lottery ticket, part of you thinks, I'm going to win. Or at least there's a chance that I might win. There's a chance that I might win. And yet, everybody, if you ask them, yes, I know I'm going to die. But underneath it all, everyone in the back of their mind thinks, somehow, it ain't going to happen to me. It's going to happen to everybody else. But somehow I'm going to get out of it. He says, it's really funny. Everybody who buys a lottery ticket thinks they're going to win, and the chances are 1 in a billion, and nobody really thinks they're going to die. Their mind and ego has allowed for some contingency somewhere. I'm gonna get out of it. You're not. And again, so Mars is going to set up there in Capricorn for the next 6 months, starting in early May, and it's really, aside from any other stuff, it's really a time to face the fear of death. Facing the fear of death. Realizing that you don't have infinite time. Your time is running out. You're only closer to death. Every day you're closer to death. Every day. All great spiritual teachers remind us that we have much less time than we think. And we waste so much of it. So one of the things that can happen when you get, for instance, when someone has exalted Mars in a natal chart, they can live a sort of courageous, maybe even somewhat reckless life until they learn to be more skillful in their actions. But it's a time to understand this need to be courageous and skillful in your actions, and to have the courage to face your dilemma as an incarnated being whose physical form will perish, will only be around for so long, and to not waste time. This is the power of the tamasic energies. Saturn and Mars especially, and the signs they rule, are really where we show up to face the difficulty and to face the unpleasantness. This being the most unpleasant thing. This is why Saturn is said to be the biggest malefic, because it literally is the karaka that takes our life, but it's also the one that makes us aware of this, and as such, rather than trying to control every nuance in this world and manipulate and manage the unmanageable, or trying to manage us out of the inevitable truth, which is that we're going to lose it all, Saturn then becomes very humble, and we become humbled before the great universe itself and learn to create a strong container of solitude and peace and stillness, and we make peace with our fears. We make peace with this life. We make peace with this world. We accept the truth, and we just let go of the kind of white knuckle grip we have. Oh, you know, I mean, honestly, as an astrologer, it's really something, because, you know, and again, this is just to be very honest about it. You know, when astrologers do readings, I will tell you, we all know that we're going to be dealing with people's, you know, difficulties. People are going through stuff, and it's difficult and hard. And you know, most people have, by the time they get astrology readings or whatever, they've made peace with it to a certain extent. They realize, like, you know, you're going to be telling them, you know, this thing might be difficult. Yeah, you got Saturn, it's going through your, you know, 7th house. Your relationships are going to get difficult for a while, or, you know, whatever it is. But what's really hard on astrologers is when you get clients who are so immature. They're like, oh, but I'm not going to have anything bad happen, right? But, you know, but I'm not going to lose any money, right? But, you know, but nothing bad will happen, right? We're just so scared of everything. It's like, and it's like this immaturity. Again, I'm not trying to be critical or mean, but this is what makes it hard on astrologers, because it's like, and then you tell them something that, yes, this is going to be difficult. You're going to have to face some difficulty, and you're like, but then what can I do to fix it? You know, but help me fix it. It's like, fix it. What you're going to do is you're going to go through it. It's going to make you more mature. It's going to make you look at your actions in it, and that's called life. And again, I'm saying this because Saturn and Capricorn energy is very much about this maturity. We need to grow up about this. Grow up. And especially in this day and age where if you're watching this video or you have any kind of means, you are perhaps some of the luckiest human beings who have ever incarnated on this earth. You might not think it, but, you know, for thousands of years, people lived to be about 30 years old if they were lucky. They didn't have any medicine. They didn't have... Most people died of like diarrhea because there's no medicine, or you get a little bug and you're dead. Like it's like your whole existence was, for most of our history, except for the last maybe 150 years, because you know, we now live in a developed world, we had to worry about getting eaten by animals, dying of God knows anything, one little bug, that have antibiotics, no medicine or anything. The point is this: you now live in a time where you have the time and the luxury to actually be bored. To actually be bored and waste time. And I'm not just saying you, I'm saying me too. We're all in this together. But you're here to know the truth, and to find the truth, and to experience your salvation and your liberation. And it doesn't come from a moment of meditation that might feel good once in a while, and that's not being liberated. That's just the first toe in the water of the cosmic ocean. Okay, that's just a little departure from the typical neurotic mind. What brings liberation, what brings the soul's transformation is sadhana, spiritual practice. It's not sadhana or spiritual practice unless it's done every day, unless it's done, you know, with a mind towards God, not a mind towards getting something. Well, if I do this, then will I get something? If I do this, will I get something? What do I get? What do I get? Again, I'm not saying this to lecture anyone, but many people don't understand this. I see, I mean, especially online with a lot of astrologers these days. And again, I'm not trying to criticize, but it's not talked about very much. Or it's talked about in very abstract ways. We're spiritual, I'm so spiritual. You know, everything is spiritual. But feeling good about something is not necessarily spiritual. It's just an emotion. You used to feel good about some romantic fantasy. Now you feel good about some astrology thing, but it's just feelings, feelings, feelings. All of that's fine. It's an evolutionary process of feeling good about one thing rather than feeling good about another. But I'll tell you the truth. Most of it has about this much effect on the evolution of your soul and your consciousness and how much you are actually getting closer to your the purpose of your incarnation, which is to know the self. And the way we get to know the self is through this disciplined action. This is why exalted Mars, or powerful Mars, of course, is the disciplined action done over and over again. But the coordination and the conjunction of Saturn energy, especially as it rules Capricorn, and Mars energy as it brings our courageous nature into that realm of facing our mortality, is probably the culmination of the spiritual path, where you do spiritual practices and sadhana every day. And that means meditation, yoga, some kind of energetic practice. Believing in something is not a spiritual practice. It's not necessarily spiritual. We all believe in something. It takes no effort to believe in something. It's your nature. If you didn't believe in something, you would kill yourself. That's just basic. What really brings the soul to its evolution is practice. Spirituality is practices. So I'm saying this because, especially from early May of 2018 until early November, it's a time for you to really up your spiritual practice level. And again, it's not me judging that you can do it. I'm saying the power is there for you to do it. The universe is supporting it. You'll see. The universe is supporting your spiritual growth through practice, disciplined practice. Cutting out what's superfluous and wasteful, that's wasting your time, that's distracting you. Making it very simple, which is Saturn energy, and then doing the right thing over and over again, Mars. Doing the right thing is Mars, over and over again is Saturn, and especially Capricorn energy. Now Mars will be joined Ketu, which of course is also the planet of mastery and expertise, and this sort of divine discontent where we realize nothing of this world is ultimate. Again, it's a really profound thing. Ketu is by far the most spiritual energy in astrology. In fact, it might be the only thing that's just purely spiritual. Ketu has no regard for this world. Wherever Ketu touches something, it says, anything but this world. Let's do this in any way except for something I could get from the world. Now that doesn't, of course, when it's joined a house rule or joined another planet, it can help support that and all. I'm not talking about, the results. I'm talking about the mindset that Ketu brings when it interacts with a planet. In a natal chart as a house ruler, and also as a Karaka, Ketu rejects what the thing wants to do in the world. This is why it's difficult. It creates confusion. Like, Ketu with the 7th Lord. It brings it out, but then it says, no matter what, I'm never happy. No matter what, I'm never happy in a relationship. And we're confused because I want it, but then I don't want it. I want it, but I hate it. Because Ketu only sees the absolute quality of something. And like the absolute quality of God in something. And guess what? Nothing in this earth is the absolute quality of God. Nothing. Not your kids, not your wife, your mother, anybody you fantasize, they're not the absolute quality of God. In your mind, of course, as an incarnation, everything is an incarnation of God, but I mean your feeling, your emotion, your idea about it is not it. And wherever Ketu is in a natal chart, you'll look and see where that thing will never please them. So you want to look at where Ketu and Mars come together in Capricorn and see what house that is in your chart. Because it's going to be a big theme in your life. This mastery, this potential discipline, and this need to really penetrate to the deeper levels of existence and time and self-mastery, where you grow up and face the truth, which is not so bad, actually. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? Particularly when you can sit still and when you can grow up and you can be mature. Then you're not just doing spiritual practice because you know you're going to get something. Oh, if I do it, then maybe, when am I going to start to feel something? You know, we're just emotional. Everything is emotional. We're just emotions most of the time. We're doing something because we want to feel better. After a while, trust me, that starts to calm down. And one of the reasons Saturn energy is difficult and we turn away from it, and we turn away from the stressful, natural malefics like Mars and Saturn and Ketu, is because they don't feel good. So it's not going to feel good. But it's those tamasic energies that really allow us to do the right thing and face those things that don't feel good. And then once we break through that level of emotional discomfort, because we're facing things that we've been neglecting for lifetimes, we're facing and showing up and finally looking at our fear of death, looking at our lack of discipline, sitting down trying to meditate after, for instance, doing some yoga and some pranayama. This is the way to actually do it. Move the body, open the energy centers, hopefully with some yoga. Then you sit down, you do some pranayama, balance the energy in the mind, and then you're just naturally in a meditative state. If you don't do that first and you just try to sit down, often the mind is all over the place. But when you do a little bit of movement with deep breath coordinated with the body, you know, with the body's motion, inhaling up, exhaling down. Inhale on expansion, exhale on release. Then you balance the energy in the mind through the nadis, right and left nostril. Then after this kind of sadhana, you are in a state of peace. You might even have a mantra practice. If you're not doing asana, mantra is the next for sure, or you can just be doing mantra, long mantras especially, sahasranamas, 1,000 names, complicated mantras, long mantras, listening to them and then trying to say them. It clears the mind. When you do these things, then once you sit to meditate, you have changed your state of mind already. You've changed your state. The reason you can't meditate now is because you're not preparing the mind to meditate. You can't go from looking at the computer or doing this or that to then sitting down and meditating. Like I couldn't just, if I try to meditate right after doing this video, it's going to take me a bit. I'm going to sit down and first I'm going to do some breathing, pranayama, some breath retention. I'm going to do a few things to get the mind in a state first. Then meditation happens. Then you simply surrender to that stillness and silence and peace that's always there. So this next 6 months is going to be supporting your spiritual practice in this way, in this depth, the courage to go through the emotional discomfort, the physical discomfort, to bring about stillness, focus into your life. Mars Ketu in Capricorn is going to really be supporting that. It's not going to be fun, but it could be the most transformative time of your life.